Hello everybody, it's Briggsil here for Nordressel Radio. Today I embark on the journey of film reviews. Each week I'll be giving you a selection of films that I've watched that very week and giving you an idea of what they're all about. Maybe you have already seen them, maybe you've not seen them and want to see them. I will recommend or not recommend depending on how well the film went. So come back every week and we'll give you some film reviews that you may find the need to watch. This week I have 4 reviews for you. Some are this year's films, some are old films. That's the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to do 2 new films or 2 recent films and 2 old films that I love and I want to share with you folks that you may not have seen. So I'm going to start off today with Groundhog Day. Now this film was released in 1993. Technically it's a fantastic film. It's starring Bill Murray and Andie MacDowell. And I don't know what it is about Bill Murray, but I find him hilarious. I love watching Bill Murray because you don't know what to expect every time you see him in a different film. He's able to play like the same character, but also different in every way. And that's what I love about Bill Murray. But this film is in the top 250, I think it's 165. Its rating on IMDb is 8.2 out of 10, which is, to me, it's about right. I wouldn't have given it more than an 8, but I wouldn't really have given it any less than a 7. So, to me, it's a film that I have to watch at least once a year. Now, if you don't know anything about the Groundhog Day, it's about a weatherman who finds himself living the same day over and over again. Now, to begin with, you see him. He's a bit cocky. He's got a huge ego, as Bill Murray plays that very well, because obviously, he is in that role pretty much every film that he does. Take, for example, Ghostbusters. He was quite an egocentric maniac sort of guy who would do things spontaneously and humorously, which is why Bill Murray is loved pretty much in every film he's done. Now, he wants to get out of doing this job. He wants to move on to better things, more in the spotlight, instead of being on some crappy news program. So what he's doing is he has to do certain things every year, and this one thing, called Groundhog Day, in a little village outside of Pittsburgh, he has to go and he has to work and report on this event about a groundhog. Now, I won't go into too many details about the storyline because, if you want to watch this film, and I recommend you do watch it at some point in your life, then it would spoil it. So what I'm going to say is, he gets to the place, he goes through that day, and then he wakes up the next day and he finds that it's exactly the day before. And it keeps repeating, the day keeps repeating, he keeps meeting the same people, he keeps talking about the same things, and he starts to go a bit mad. And that's what I love about this film, and that's why I recommend it to all you folks out there who've never seen it before. If you've never seen it, you need to rent this, or you need to catch it when it's on TV, because it is a fantastic film, and I promise you, you will not regret watching it. So that was Groundhog Day. Bill Murray, Andie MacDowell. Yes, it is 1993. It is a little aged for you younger folks, but it's still fantastic. It's very funny. It's also got a little drama twist in it, because obviously he gets a little bit depressed about what he's doing. And hopefully you will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed watching it over the last basically 10 years. The next film I'm covering is a film called Killer Elite. Now this film came out this year, the 23rd of September. I went to watch it. It was a decent film. I'm not going to say it's a fantastic film. I'm not going to say it's a horrible film. There are bits of it that annoy me. There are bits of it that make me smile. There are bits of me that I really enjoy. I'll give you the synopsis here. Jason Statham and Robert De Niro are on a job. Their job is to kill someone. We don't really find out who it is. That's not important because obviously this is the introduction. This is how the story is going to progress. Now the job doesn't go to plan. They finish the job, but it doesn't go to plan. And Jason Statham decides it's time to retire from the business. So Jason Statham retires. It shows him in his life in Australia. It shows him meeting a woman, and then it kind of spirals out of control for him. He receives a package saying that his partner or his mentor, Robert De Niro, has been taken hostage or captured, captive by somebody, and they basically are blackmailing him into doing a job for them. And that's how it works. Now, this film stars Jason Statham, Robert De Niro, obviously, Clive Owen, and various other smaller actors that still play really good roles. Now, you'd think that Jason Statham is the good guy, but it's very difficult to work out what is really going on, because it's a action crime thriller, so it's kind of got a twist and turn in the storyline, which is fantastic. Clive Owen's character is very difficult to understand because he is basically ex-SAS, and it was his job to look after the other ex-SAS that are around, making sure they're okay, their cover's not blown, that sort of stuff, because obviously back then SAS was a secretive organisation, let's just put it that way. I just want to point out as well at this point that this film is based on true events. It's based from a book that was written by an ex-SAS operative, someone called Ranulph Fiennes. You may recognise his name. He has written a lot of things. He's done a lot of survival things on TV and such. So Clive Owen is the protector of these SAS people. Jason Statham has to take a job that involves killing these ex-SAS. That's just how it works. I'm not going into too many details because obviously you might want to watch this. Now, it's very difficult to work out who's the good guy and bad guy. You're thinking at the beginning it's Jason Statham, he's trying to find his buddy, he's trying to retire, he's trying to get out of the business, and then you look at Clive Owen trying to protect the lives of, you know, people that he's served with, and obviously it's his job to protect. And it doesn't really quite work very well in terms of keeping the storyline going, because there's lots of little bits that cut up and make it difficult. But generally, the film is very good. It ends explosive, it starts explosive, and there's not very many slow bits in the film, which make it a very fast-paced, quite exciting film. But on the other hand, there are small inaccuracies, there are small annoyances in terms of accents, for one. There is one character who is played by Dominic Purcell. You may recognise him from, he was in Blade 3, I believe. He was in Equilibrium, Mission Impossible 2. He was also in Prison Break. Now, Dominic Purcell was born in England, but obviously he was raised in Australia, if some of you know that. The problem is his accent is trying to be English in this film, and it doesn't work. It keeps flowing into Australia. It's just annoying. I don't see why they can't just get an English person to do the job. You know, it's not very difficult. And the other person that they work with has also got an even worse accent, as far as I'm concerned. So the accents let it down, if I'm honest. Obviously Jason Statham's got his London accent, and Clive Owen's got his accent, and Robert De Niro's got his accent, and they play their own accents, which is absolutely fine. So I'm glad they've stuck, instead of giving Jason Statham a horrible accent like they've done in a couple of his films. But generally, the film is decent. I do recommend you renting it. I wouldn't buy it. I'd rent it, see what you think. If it's then good enough, I'd then get it on, Blu-ray or whatever. But IMDb give it a rating of 6.6 out of 10. I'd say that was about right. I wouldn't give it more than a 7, and I wouldn't give it more than a 6. That's, basically exactly what IMDb is saying. So the next film I'm going to talk to you about is Cowboys and Aliens. Now, this film came out earlier this year, 17th of August in the UK. And it did okay. Now, I've seen it 2 or 3 times now. I enjoyed watching it. I'm not saying it was horrible. I watched it 2 or 3 times. I had to like it at some point. But most films, when I watch them more than once, I kind of realise that I like them more and more. This film was the opposite. I liked it when I first saw it, the second time it was decent, and the third time it got annoying. Now the reason why it got annoying was because I kept looking at the Harrison Ford character, who plays one of the... Technically he's a bad guy, but he's also a good guy in the film. He plays a cowboy, and I can't get past him being Indiana Jones. You know, with Blade Runner, he was fantastic. He was able to separate himself from the stereotype of being Indiana Jones, which was great. But in this film, there was too many similarities with how he acted and how he resolved, how he got angry, that sort of thing, to Indiana Jones, and it just didn't work. Daniel Craig plays an American quite well. He's the main character, Jake Lonergan. He wakes up in the middle of the desert, like prairie land, whatever it is, desert with cactuses and that sort of stuff, and tufts of grass, plant vegetation, that sort of stuff. He wakes up, he's got this metal thing on his wrist, and he's lost his mind. He doesn't know where he is, he doesn't know who he is, doesn't know what's going on, when it is. He eventually finds himself getting himself back to a little village or little town called Absolution, I believe. And this is where things start to take off. You start to work out who he is, what he's doing. I have to say that visually the film is very good, the special effects are very good, but I can't get past how irritating the storyline is after watching it once or twice. The storyline just gets a bit annoying. The aliens... I don't understand why the aliens need to attack the people. You'll understand when you watch the film, if you watch the film, what the aliens are trying to do, what they're trying to do, trying to accomplish. What's the point? Generally, the cast is very well done. You've got people like Sam Rockwell, who did The Moon, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Olivia Wilde, who did Tron Legacy and is in House, or was in House, and you've got a couple of other people as well, which are very recognisable. I can't say there's a bad actor in the bunch. They all seem to do their jobs well, apart from Harrison Ford's character, which just didn't work in terms of who he was playing, not who he is as an actor. Generally, the score has been given 6.3 out of 10. On the first viewing, I'd have said 7 out of 10. The second viewing, 6 out of 10. And obviously this review here is 5.5 out of 10. That's what I'd give it, because I was disappointed that it didn't stick. The film didn't stay liked, unfortunately. Now, you may recognise some of the camera work, some of the special effects in terms of how they are crafted, because the director obviously is the same director as the Iron Man series, Jon Favreau, or Favreau, depending on how you look at it. He did Iron Man, he did Elf, which had what's his face in it, Will Ferrell. There was I Love You Man, he was in that, because he's also an actor as well, because he was in the Iron Man series. So I like his films, but this one isn't one of his best, and hopefully this won't deter him from doing any further films. So that was Cowboys and Aliens. I do recommend you go to rent it, but do not buy it unless you've rented it before and you liked it. So the next film I'm going to review, and the final one for this week's podcast, is Hamburger Hill. Now, this film was created in 1987, and it's a realistic battle of Vietnam War called Hamburger Hill. I'll give you a little story behind it, because this is technically a true story. The characters who are, or the actors who play the characters are fictional, but the story in terms of taking the hill is a real story. Hamburger Hill was a hill called 937, and the Americans stumbled upon it during the Vietnam War and were attacked by the NVA, the North Vietnamese Army, and NVA basically held the hill for 10 days, killing many, many US soldiers trying to take the hill. Now this film is about that battle, but it's not all about that battle. The last probably 45 minutes to an hour is about the battle. The first 40 minutes or so is about the stereotypes of the Vietnam War. The blacks versus the white. The situation, the music, the soundtrack to the film is very good, as you'd expect in a Vietnam-esque film. There's not really many main actors. You've got Don Cheadle, who is in Hotel Rwanda, I believe, and he was also in the Iron Man, the first one. Dylan McDermott, he may be recognisable because he did some very strange films in the mid-90s or the early 90s. I can't remember. I can't really put my finger on what he did. He was in The Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood. He was in The Miracle on 34th Street, a bit of a gay film, that one. He was in a couple of he was in Twister, and various other bits and pieces. Nothing really major, but I like him as an actor. I thought he was a good actor. Now this film's got a 6.5 out of 10 rating. I reckon that's fair because generally the special effects of the film, obviously in 1987, were quite low budget as far as I'm concerned. The napalm, which is basically it's dropping and lighting petrol, in a bomb form, except from obviously it burns a bit hotter, but that's what it should look like. But it doesn't. It just looks like fireworks, and that's a bit cheap. But generally, the feel of the whole film is very realistic interpretation, I believe, of that battle, the battle for Hamburger Hill. Now, what I love about this film is not necessarily the battle and the action sequences, but the gritty feeling of the film. Now, you really get a sense of the hopelessness, the kind of aimlessness of this war. It was a class war, it was a race war, it was a down in the trenches, dirty war. It was a pointless war in terms of the objectives the Americans are trying to win. They attacked this hill, by accident. They were just going on a routine patrol, they were attacked, and then the command decided it would be cool to try and take the hill, and they wasted a lot of time and a lot of people on something that they then, when they captured it, within 6 days, they let it go. They just left, and the Vietnamese just walked right back in, took that position again, and, with no casualties whatsoever. So all those people that died fighting for that hill died for nothing, except their brothers. And it's unfortunate, really, that this film has had to obviously showcase this stupidity of warfare. But it's what I like about this film, and it's why I watch this film once or twice a year, every year for the last probably 12 years or something silly. So, it's not a classic like Saving Private Ryan, for instance, or Platoon, or various bits and pieces like that, where it's got star-studded all the way through, it's action-packed, it's high budget. This one was, the budget was fairly low considering it was a massive war film. So in my interpretation, I'd give this a 7.5 out of 10. Obviously, you will not see that on IMDb, that they've given it 6.5. But I suggest what you do, folks, is as normal, rent it and see what you think. I personally would buy it. I have bought it, so I do know about the film. In fact, I've got 3 copies of it. I've got it on DVD form, and I've got it on VHS, and I've got a recording on a VHS, as in I recorded it off the TV back in the day. So this film, to me, is fantastic, but don't buy it for the action, buy it for the actual story, the actual feeling of the film. Anyway, that has been my film reviews for this week. I hope I haven't bored you senseless with my mindless droning, and I hope you take some of my reviews, but make your own mind about these films. if you do want to see them, or you've wanted to see them because you like the trailer, then go and see them, or go to the Blockbuster or wherever you do to rent your videos, films, and go and rent it, and then come back and tell me what you think. Remember to come back next week, folks, for another podcast about some of the films that I'll have watched that week. Thank you very much for listening, and see you next time.